My name is Carolyn Stewart Gallagher, and I'm 29 years old. 3 months ago, I opened my mother's purse, and in that exact moment, every single thing I thought I knew about my family completely shattered. My parents spent $95,000 on my sister's wedding. 280 guests, a luxury resort, a custom Vera Wang gown, a fully open bar, a live band, and a honeymoon in Hawaii. But when it came to my wedding, they looked me dead in the eye and said, "We just can't help you. We're still recovering financially from your sister's big day." So, I took every overnight shift available on Christmas Eve. I worked through New Year's Eve. We sold my husband's pickup truck. I drained my retirement account and ate the massive penalty fees. 65 guests, $32,000, and I paid for every single penny of it myself. And then, I found the receipt. A $40,000 refund. It was for a secret celebration my mother had been planning behind everyone's back for my sister. A celebration my own father knew absolutely nothing about. In that moment, I didn't just lose my trust in my mother. I realized that my entire life had been built on a lie. If you're listening to this right now, please drop a comment and let me know what time it is where you are. I read every single one. Now, let me take you back to how this all started. I'm a registered nurse at the Osborne Medical Center in Scottsdale, Arizona. I've been there for 6 years, specializing in the ICU. I've held the hands of dying patients at 3 in the morning. I've delivered the worst news of people's lives to their families. I've seen things that would break most people. But nothing could have ever prepared me for what my own family was capable of. My sister Brittany is 3 years younger than me. She's 26 and works as a dental hygienist at a private practice in Tempe. It's a good job with decent money. But from the moment she was born, Brittany was always different, always special. At least she was in our mother's eyes. Our mom, Sandra, is 58. She's the office manager at a law firm in downtown Phoenix. She is meticulous, organized, and incredibly controlling. For as long as I can remember, she was the one who managed all the household finances. "Handling the money is your mother's job," my dad would always say. Leonard Stewart is 63. He used to work at an auto parts manufacturing plant. It was a solid middle management position. But then, in January of 2021, the layoffs hit. He was 58 at the time and suddenly found himself out of work. Now, he does seasonal tax prep for H&R Block and takes on odd bookkeeping jobs throughout the year. After Dad lost his job, Mom took over everything. Joint accounts, bills, investments, savings. Dad never questioned it. He trusted her completely. I understand now, too late, exactly what that kind of trust can cost you. Growing up, I was always the responsible one. The oldest daughter. The one who got straight A's without being asked, cleaned her own room, did her homework, and never caused trouble. Brittany was the baby, the sensitive child, the one who needed extra attention, extra patience, and extra everything. "Carolyn, you're the oldest. You need to understand." I heard that phrase so many times it just became background noise, like the traffic outside or the hum of the refrigerator. It was always there, so I stopped noticing it. It took me a long time to realize that understanding was just another word for accepting unfair treatment. In early 2024, when Brittany got engaged, my mother completely transformed. It was like she became possessed. Planning this wedding became her full-time obsession. The venue, the catering, the florists, the photographers. She and Brittany would spend entire weekends glued to their laptops, their Pinterest boards multiplying wildly. Brittany was marrying Tyler Weston. His family owns 3 car dealerships in the Phoenix area. They come from serious money, well off, a perfect match in my mother's eyes. The wedding was set for September 20th, 2024, at the Scottsdale Plaza Resort at McCormick Ranch. 280 guests, an open bar, a live band, and an $8,200 Vera Wang dress. I only know the exact amount because I saw the receipt. My mom left it on the kitchen counter one afternoon, and I caught a glimpse of it while waiting for my coffee to brew. $8,200 for a dress she would wear once. The grand total for the entire wedding was $95,000. At that wedding, I was seated at table 12, right by the restrooms. It was the table reserved for distant relatives nobody really talked to, and co-workers invited out of pure obligation. Connor sat next to me, holding my hand, trying to pretend he didn't notice the seating arrangement. I watched my mother cry during the ceremony. They were real tears. Her mascara smeared, and she dabbed her eyes with a lace handkerchief that probably cost more than my shoes. Brittany looked beautiful, radiant, like a princess in a fairy tale, and I was genuinely happy for her, I really was. But deep down, a tiny voice whispered, "Will they ever do this for you when it's your turn?" I buried that voice. I told myself I was being petty, jealous, and ungrateful. 6 months later, I got my answer. On a Saturday evening in November 2024, Connor proposed to me at South Mountain Park, right before sunset. The sky was an incredible orange and pink, and he dropped to one knee with a ring he had saved up for 8 months to buy. $2,400. It wasn't a huge diamond, but to me it was absolutely perfect. Before he could even finish asking, I said yes. I called my mother that exact night. It was 7:47 p.m. I remember clearly because I looked at my phone right before dialing, my hands still shaking with excitement. "Mom," Connor proposed, "we're engaged." There was a pause on the other end, just half a second longer than normal. "Oh, congratulations, sweetie. Connor is a good guy." No excited screaming, no, "Let me talk to him," no, "When are we celebrating?" Instead, she followed it up with, "So, you guys are planning something small and simple, right? After Brittany's wedding, your father and I need some time to recover financially." The call lasted 4 minutes and 22 seconds. She didn't ask to see the ring. She didn't ask about my plans. She didn't ask how I felt. 2 weeks later, I called again, this time to have the conversation I had been dreading. "Mom, I wanted to ask if you and Dad could help out a bit with our wedding expenses, even just a small amount." She let out a heavy sigh, the kind that communicated she knew exactly what was coming. "Sweetie, you have to understand. Brittany's wedding was very expensive, much more than we anticipated. Your father has been working part-time for years now. We had to dip into our savings. We're still paying off credit cards, the roof needs repairs, and we're helping with Grandma's medical bills." She listed the reasons like items on a grocery receipt. Then came the line that hurt the most. "Besides, you and Connor both have great jobs. You're stable. Brittany needed more support because she's Brittany. You've always been the independent one, Carolyn. You don't need us looking out for you the way she does." I didn't need them. I was independent. It's funny how words meant to sound like compliments can feel exactly like abandonment. That call lasted 11 minutes. When I hung up, I sat on the edge of the bed staring at the wall. 20 minutes later, Connor found me. "What did she say?" I looked up and said, "We're on our own." He sat down beside me and wrapped his arm around my shoulder. "Then we'll do it ourselves, together." At 2 a.m, we were sitting at the kitchen table with his old Dell laptop, building an Excel spreadsheet from scratch. Column A was the expense, column B was the amount, and column C was the source of the funds. We needed at least $30,000 to pull off a decent wedding, not a wedding like Brittany's. No resort, no Vera Wang, no live band, just 65 guests, a nice venue, good food, a photographer, flowers, and a dress that didn't cost more than my monthly salary. We had $6,200 in savings. We still needed to find nearly $24,000. I kept typing until 3 a.m. My eyes burned and my coffee went cold twice. The very last line I entered into that spreadsheet read, "Sell Connor's truck." I turned to look at him. He was already watching me, and he just nodded. He didn't say a single word. That truck was a 2018 Ford F-150 XLT. Magnetic gray, 67,000 miles. It was the first major thing Connor bought with his own money after landing his first real job. He washed it every Sunday, changed the oil himself, and knew every single scratch, ding, and rattle on that vehicle. The next morning, he listed it on Facebook Marketplace. 2 weeks later, a man named Daniel Morrison bought it. He was 34, a father of 2, and needed a reliable truck for his landscaping business. He paid $18,500 in cash. We met him in the parking lot of the Safeway on McDowell Road on a Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. Connor handed over the keys, signed the title, and shook Daniel's hand. I sat in my Honda Civic watching them. I watched Connor stand there as Daniel drove away. He didn't move for a long time, just standing in that empty parking spot, watching the truck disappear around the corner. That night, he told me, "It's just a truck. You matter so much more than a piece of metal." But I saw how he looked at the empty space in the driveway where that F-150 used to sit. I saw his hand instinctively reach for keys that were no longer there. Even with that, it wasn't enough money. So I did something I promised myself I would never do. I went to the hospital's HR department and submitted a request for a hardship withdrawal from my 401k account. $8,200, Form 7892-CG. I signed it in the break room during my lunch shift, my hand trembling. The penalty was 10%, meaning $820 vanished instantly, plus another $1,600 set aside for taxes later. I lost $2,400 just to access my own money early. The HR representative, a woman named Denise, looked at me with pure pity. "You know this hits your retirement fund for decades down the road, right?" I knew, but I signed it anyway. After that, I began picking up every single overtime shift I could find. November, December, January, February, March. I worked nights, weekends, and holidays. On Christmas Eve of 2024, from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., I was in the ICU while my family was at my parents' house in Paradise Valley, eating dinner and opening gifts. Brittany posted Instagram stories of champagne glasses, twinkling lights, and my mother laughing. The caption read, "Family first." I saw it while taking a quick break in the hallway. I was standing right outside room 412, where a 78-year-old man named Mr. Gerald Patterson was losing his battle with congestive heart failure. At 11:47 p.m., Mr. Patterson looked up at me and whispered, "Merry Christmas, nurse." I forced a smile and adjusted his IV line. "Merry Christmas, Mr. Patterson." New Year's Eve was the exact same story, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. At 11:59 p.m., I stood in the corridor listening to the distant sound of fireworks. Somewhere out there, people were kissing, celebrating, and starting fresh. My scrubs were stained from a code blue shift we had run 2 hours prior. The patient didn't make it. I opened my phone. Brittany had posted again. Champagne, my parents, Tyler with his arm around her waist. Hashtags, blessed, family, new year, new me. I shut the phone off and went back to work. By March of 2025, I had clocked over 300 hours of overtime. That meant 300 hours of missed holidays, skipped birthdays, and eating dinner alone under the sterile fluorescent lights of the hospital cafeteria. Overtime paid $52 an hour instead of my usual $38. Total extra income, $11,400. Combined with the truck money, the 401k withdrawal, and our initial savings, we finally had enough. We also had to cancel our honeymoon. We had originally booked a 7-night stay in Maui through Expedia at the Hyatt Regency, an ocean view room for $4,800. I canceled it and got $4,560 back, losing a $240 cancellation fee. We exchanged it for a 3-night stay at an Airbnb cabin in Sedona for $420. I told myself it would be romantic and cozy. We'd see the red rocks, drink wine on the porch, and make the best of it. The night before the wedding, I took one last look at the spreadsheet. Total expenses, $32,000. Total income, $32,000. Balance, 0. We did it, but that balance sheet didn't account for what I had actually lost. The sleep, the holidays, the honeymoon, the truck that meant the world to my husband, and the retirement fund I had been building since I was 23. You can't put those things into a spreadsheet. On April 12th, 2025, my wedding day, I woke up at 5:30 a.m. in our one-bedroom apartment on 68th Street in Scottsdale. I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing. My dress hung on the back of the closet door. It wasn't a Vera Wang, it was a BHLDN dress, a style called Willow Baspina. Ivory, size 6, $1,200. I bought it on sale. It was simple, elegant, and I loved it. I brewed some coffee at home, just Starbucks Pike Place roast, because we could no longer afford to waste money at coffee shops. I sat on the couch, staring at the dress in the gray morning light. At 6:15 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mom. "Good morning, sweetie. I'll see you at the ceremony on time. Just taking Brittany to get her hair done first. So happy for you." Brittany's hair appointment was at Salon Blonde, $280. Mom paid for it. My mother spent the morning of my wedding day getting my sister's hair done. I didn't reply. The ceremony started at 4 p.m. at the Wright House on South Alma School Road in Mesa. I found the place after touring 11 different venues, comparing prices and negotiating hard with the manager. 65 guests, a quarter of the size of Brittany's wedding. No live band, just a DJ named Mike from Desert Beats Entertainment for $850. No open bar, just wine and beer with a strict 2-drink limit per person. No Vera Wang, no Jimmy Choo's, no Cartier. But when I walked down that aisle and saw Connor standing there in his rented suit, his eyes watering and a smile so wide it looked like it would split his face open, nothing else mattered. "You look beautiful," he whispered as I reached him. "I'm the luckiest guy in the world." In that perfect moment, I believed him. Then I caught my mother's eye in the front row. She was smiling a polite, reserved smile, the exact kind of smile she gives the mail carrier. At Brittany's wedding, she had cried so hard her mascara ran. She clutched my father's arm, sobbing because her baby girl was growing up. But at my wedding, she sat with her hands folded neatly in her lap, looking like she was attending a routine business meeting. The reception was held at the same venue. At 7:30 p.m., dinner was served, and the speeches began. Connor's best friend gave a toast that made everyone laugh. My maid of honor, my college roommate Jessica, shared some embarrassing stories that brought happy tears to my eyes. And then my mother stood up. The room went quiet, 65 faces turning toward her. Someone clinked a glass. My mother adjusted her silk shirt, a gray one that looked expensive, and smiled. "I'd like to say a few words about my oldest daughter." I felt Connor's hand find mine under the table. His fingers were trembling slightly. Carolyn has always been completely independent. From the time she was a little girl, she knew how to take care of herself. She never needed anyone's help, not with school, not with her career, and not even from us as her parents. She paused, making direct eye contact with me. I am incredibly proud of the life she has built all on her own. She's never needed anyone, not even us. She raised her glass. "To Carolyn and Connor, may your independence carry you through everything." The room erupted into applause. Someone shouted, "Cheers!" and glasses clinked. I sat there, my smile completely frozen. Holding my champagne glass, I felt something deeply fracture inside me. My mother had just stood up in front of 65 people and rewritten my 8 months of painful struggle into a casual compliment. In her version of the story, I hadn't been cast aside. I was just independent. I hadn't been forced to sacrifice everything. I had chosen to do it. I didn't need help and I never wanted it. She packaged my pain as a virtue. Connor squeezed my hand so hard it actually hurt. His jaw was set tight. He had heard it too. That night, in our Sedona Airbnb, not the Hyatt Regency in Maui, I sat on the edge of the bed and cried. Not because I was sad, and not because I regretted marrying Connor. He was the best decision I had ever made. I cried because I finally allowed myself to feel every emotion I had been suppressing for 8 straight months. Connor just held me. He didn't try to fix it. He didn't say, "Everything will be fine," or "Just ignore them." He just held me and let me break down. At 11:48 p.m., he said, "You don't need them to see your worth. I see it, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you know it." I didn't sleep at all that night, but as the sun rose over Cathedral Rock, painting the red landscape in shades of gold and pink, I made a decision. I was done expecting anything from my family. I was done wishing for things to be different. It would be much easier that way. If you've ever been the strong one in your family, the one who is never allowed to be vulnerable, never allowed to have needs, and never made a priority, type the word toast in the comments. I just want to know I'm not alone out here. 6 months went by. I saw my family occasionally. Birthdays, the random Sunday dinner, the kind of superficial socializing people do when real intimacy has been dead for a long time. I never brought up the wedding. They didn't either. We pretended everything was fine. That was what our family did best. And then October 15th, 2025 arrived. My mother called that morning. She was having trouble syncing her iPad with iCloud and needed my help. "You're so good with technology, Carolyn. Could you please drop by?" I didn't want to go, but a part of me, the part that still wanted to be a good daughter, that still hoped to feel included, said yes. I drove 25 minutes from my apartment to the house on Mockingbird Lane in Paradise Valley where I grew up. Walking into that house brought back memories I wasn't even sure were real anymore. I arrived at 10:30 a.m. My mom was home alone. My dad had left for H&R Block. The iPad was an easy fix. Log out of iCloud, log back in, wait for the sync, standard procedure. But as the sync finished, a calendar notification popped up on the screen. It was a single entry. September 10th, 2025, 10 a.m. Call venue regarding refund for Brittany's second reception. I stared at it for 3 or 4 seconds, long enough for the words to scramble in my head into something that made absolutely no sense. Brittany, second reception, refund. What did second reception even mean? I took a quick screenshot, saved it to my photos, and cleared the notification before my mother walked back into the room. "Is everything all set, sweetie?" she called out from the kitchen. "Yeah, Mom, all fixed." I grabbed my purse and headed toward the front door. I needed to leave, I needed to think. But I had to walk through the kitchen first, and that's when I saw it. My mother's purse was sitting on the granite counter, wide open, unzipped, with the corner of a white piece of paper sticking out. I shouldn't have looked. I know some people might call what I did an invasion of privacy, But after everything, after that wedding, that toast, and being told I never needed anyone while sacrificing everything for 8 months, I felt I had a right to see what was on that paper. I pulled the receipt out. It was white paper with professional, laser-printed letterhead from the Scottsdale Plaza Resort at McCormick Ranch, the exact venue where Brittany had been married. My eyes scanned down the page. Refund processed, $40,000. Event date, September 20th, 2025. Cancellation requested by Sandra Stewart. Refund issue date, July 25th, 2025. $40,000 paid for an event scheduled for September 20th, exactly on Brittany's first wedding anniversary. An anniversary party, a second reception. My mother had been planning it, paid a $40,000 deposit, and then canceled it. An event I never even knew existed. My hands turned cold and my heartbeat pounded in my ears. "Carolyn, are you ready to head out?" Mom's voice came from the hallway, getting closer. I took a photo of the receipt, slipped it back into her purse exactly how I found it, and walked toward the front door on legs that didn't feel like my own. "Thanks for fixing the iPad, dear. Let's do dinner sometime soon." "Sure, Mom, sometime soon." I drove to a Walgreens parking lot on Shea Boulevard and sat in my car for 45 minutes. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at the 2 photos on my phone. The calendar entry, regarding refund for Brittany's second reception. The receipt, $40,000. Cancellation requested by Sandra Stewart. One question kept spinning in my mind. Did Dad know about this? I spent the next week investigating. I called the venue using a fake name, asking about their cancellation policy for large events. "If you cancel more than 60 days before the event date, you're eligible for a 90% refund," the woman on the phone told me. "Any less than 60 days, and that amount drops significantly." The event was set for September 20th. The refund was issued on July 25th. That meant my mother had likely canceled around July 10th, roughly 72 days in advance, putting her right inside the window for a full refund. It was calculated, deliberate, and she knew exactly when to pull the plug to get the money back. But why plan a second reception in the first place? Brittany got married in September of 2024. Why plan a $40,000 anniversary party, and why cancel it? I thought about calling Brittany directly to demand an explanation, but my gut told me to go to my father first. On October 21st, I texted him, "Dad, I need to talk to you, just you without Mom. Can we meet tomorrow morning?" He replied 3 minutes later, "Is everything okay? You're making me a bit nervous." "I don't know yet. Please, just the 2 of us." "Okay, sweetie, 9 a.m. Cartel Coffee." The next morning, October 22nd, I walked into the Cartel Coffee Lab on Stetson Drive in Scottsdale and found my father already sitting in a corner booth near the window. He was wearing a navy blue polo shirt. He had more gray hair than I remembered, and he looked older, exhausted. "Carolyn." He stood up to hug me. "What's going on? You sounded very serious." I sat down across from him. He had a $4.50 cortado in front of him. I just ordered a water. My stomach was in knots, and I couldn't drink anything. "Dad, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." He nodded slowly. "Okay." I took a deep breath. "Do you know anything about a second reception for Brittany?" His face went blank, then shifted into confusion. "A second what? What are you talking about?" "An anniversary party. It was planned for this past September at the Scottsdale Resort." He shook his head. "Carolyn, I have no idea what you're talking about. Brittany and Tyler separated back in March. There was no anniversary to celebrate." The words felt like ice water, throwing me off balance. "Wait, Brittany separated? Why didn't I know that? Nobody told you?" My father's expression shifted, a wave of guilt crossing his eyes. "Your mother told me not to say anything. She said you were too busy planning your own wedding and she didn't want to upset you. I assumed she would tell you later." My sister had been separated from her husband since March 15th, 2025, a full month before my wedding, and absolutely nobody told me. I pulled out my phone, pulled up the photos, and slid it across the table. "Dad, look at this." He picked up the phone, looking first at the calendar entry, then at the receipt. I watched his face drain of color. For 47 seconds, he didn't say a single word. I counted. Then he set the phone down, his hands visibly shaking. "Where did you find this?" "Mom's purse and her iPad." $40,000, he muttered, as if testing the number to see if it was real. "For a party I knew nothing about." "Dad, did that money come out of your joint account?" He looked up at me, and in that moment, I saw something break inside him. "I don't know," he whispered. "I don't know. I haven't looked at our accounts in years. Your mother handles all of it." Can you check right now? Can you see if $40,000 was deposited in July? He pulled out his own phone and opened his banking app. I watched him swipe through the screen, his fingers moving clumsily. I'm looking at our joint checking account, he said slowly. July 25th. There's no record of a $40,000 deposit. Nothing at all? Nothing. Silence fell over us. The noise of the coffee shop faded into background static. Dad, I said carefully, if that refund didn't go into the joint account, where did it go? He looked up at me with eyes I barely recognized anymore. I don't know. 2 weeks went by. I told Connor everything. He held me tightly while I cried again, but this time it wasn't out of sadness. It was a deep, burning anger. What do you want to do? He asked. I want answers. I want them to say it to my face. We planned it out carefully. I didn't want to ambush them with screaming or throwing things, or create a scene I would regret later. I wanted to make them sit down, show them the evidence, and ask simple questions, the kind they couldn't answer without exposing the truth. On November 5th, I sent a message to the family group chat. We need to have a family meeting, everyone, Thursday the 20th at 7 p.m. at Mom and Dad's house. It's very important. Mom replied immediately, What is this about, sweetie? I didn't answer. On November 20th, 2025 at 7 p.m., Connor and I arrived exactly on time. The house looked completely normal. Warm lights glowed through the windows, Mom's Lexus sat in the driveway, and the potted plants that had been on the porch since I was 12 were still there. Inside they were waiting. Mom sat on the cognac leather sofa, her legs crossed, a cup of tea resting on the coffee table in front of her. She wore a gray cashmere sweater, looking calm and collected, like she was hosting a book club. Brittany sat next to her in jeans and a cream sweater, her arms crossed in a defensive posture. Dad sat in the armchair by the window. He knew what was coming. He had known since our meeting at the coffee shop. So, Mom said with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes, what is this important meeting about? You've been incredibly mysterious, Carolyn. I sat down across from her, Connor right beside me, and placed my iPad on the coffee table. I found something, I said, and I need you to explain it. I unlocked the screen and pulled up the first photo, the receipt. This was in your purse, Mom. She glanced down at it. Her expression didn't change, but I saw her shoulders tighten slightly. You went through my purse? It was wide open when I was fixing your iPad. That's private property, Carolyn. Apparently the truth is your private property too, I said, letting the words hang in the air. $40,000 refunded from the Scottsdale resort. For Brittany's second reception, an anniversary party scheduled for this past September. Brittany shifted on the couch, refusing to meet my eyes. Why didn't I know about this? Mom let out a heavy sigh, the exact sigh she used whenever she felt I was being unreasonable. It was supposed to be a surprise for Brittany, a gift for their 1-year anniversary. I started planning it back in January. January, I repeated. You started planning a $40,000 party for Brittany in January, just 2 months before my wedding. The exact same wedding you told me you had absolutely no money to help with. That's completely different, Carolyn. Is it? My mother's words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. My savings account was built from my own personal money. It has nothing to do with the family's finances. Your personal savings? I asked, completely stunned. Yes, I've been putting that money away for years. It has absolutely zero bearing on whether your father and I could afford to help fund your wedding. I looked over at my dad. His eyes were glued to the hardwood floor, completely motionless. Dad, I said, keeping my voice as steady as possible, did you know anything about this party? He slowly shook his head. No. Did you know Mom had $40,000 hidden away in a personal account? He finally lifted his gaze, looking at my mother first, then back at me. No. The room fell into a suffocating silence. You could hear a pin drop. I reached down and tapped the second photo on my iPad, bringing up the calendar notification. This was right on your iPad, Mom. It popped up while I was fixing the sync issues. She glanced at the screen, her expression tightening just a fraction. So, it says right here, refund for Brittany's second reception, July. You canceled the event months after Brittany and Tyler separated, but you kept it completely to yourself. You didn't tell Dad, and you definitely didn't tell me. Why? Why on earth should I tell you? She snapped, defensive. That is private family business. Private business? A laugh escaped my throat, but it sounded completely hollow, sharp, and wrong. Mom, I worked the overnight shift in the ICU on Christmas Eve while the rest of you ate dinner together. I sold my husband's truck. I cleaned out my retirement, paid the massive penalties, and canceled my honeymoon. I did all of that because you looked me in the eye and told me you were broke. My voice started to crack. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay anchored. And the entire time, you were sitting on over $67,000 in an account you hid from your own husband, all while bankrolling a secret $40,000 celebration for the exact same daughter you just spent $95,000 on. Brittany finally broke her silence from the couch. Carolyn, you're making a massive deal out of nothing. You've always done perfectly well for yourself. You didn't need the help. You've said it yourself a million times. I said that? Or did you just decide that because I'm independent, I don't have needs? You always claim you're independent and don't need anyone, my mother chimed in. I say that because I had to, I yelled, the anger finally breaking through. Because every single time I ever asked for anything, I was told to be the understanding one, that Brittany needed the extra support, that I was the strong one. I turned my head and looked directly at my sister. Really looked at her. Do you have any actual clue what it cost me to have a wedding, Brittany? Do you even know? She stared back at me, completely speechless. Let me lay it out for you, I said, keeping my pace slow, clear, and clinical, like I was reading a patient's medical chart. I clocked over 300 hours of overtime. That means Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, Thanksgiving, and every single weekend for 8 straight months. While you were sipping champagne at Mom and Dad's house, I was holding the hands of dying patients. Connor sold his pickup truck, the first major thing he ever bought with money he earned himself. $18,500, gone. I took $8,200 out of my 401k, losing $820 in penalties and another $1,600 in taxes just to access my own cash. I canceled my honeymoon. 7 nights in Maui turned into 3 nights at an Airbnb in Sedona, and I did every single bit of it because our parents looked me in the face and told me they couldn't help. I leaned forward, and the entire time Mom was guarding a secret account with $67,000 and planning a $40,000 party for you. Total silence. Brittany's face flushed a deep crimson. She looked completely humiliated. I didn't know, she whispered, her voice barely audible. That's exactly the point. I turned back to my mother. Where is the money, Mom? Where did the refund go? She lifted her chin, her eyes flashing with defiance. It went into my savings. My personal account, the one your father doesn't have access to. I have every right to my own financial security. I swiped to the next document on my iPad. It was the one piece of information I had asked my dad to look into, a formal request to Chase Bank for an account overview. This is a screenshot Dad took yesterday from your banking portal. There is no record of a $40,000 deposit in the joint checking account in July. It's completely missing from the household finances. I turned the screen toward my dad. Dad, did you have any idea Mom had a completely separate account, one that your name isn't even attached to? His voice was nothing more than a faint whisper. No. I looked back at my mother. Her face was as cold and rigid as stone. How much money is in that account, Mom? She refused to answer. Dad ran a full credit and asset check yesterday. Standard procedure when you're looking to refinance. He found an active Chase account listed entirely under your name, Sandra. I let the weight of the silence stretch out across the living room. $67,340. My father let out a sound I had never heard him make in my entire life. It was a choked cross between a cough and a sob. Sandra, he said, his voice breaking, is that real? She didn't look at him. Everyone needs a safety net, Leonard. Everyone needs a backup plan. This isn't about you. It's about security. Security from what? I'm your husband. We've been married for 35 years. Exactly. The air in the room felt incredibly heavy, like we were moving underwater. I watched my father stare at the woman he had loved for over 3 decades, the woman he completely trusted to manage every cent they owned, the woman who told him money was tight while hiding $67,000 from him. I could see the exact moment something inside him completely shattered. I don't want the money, I said quietly. Every head in the room snapped toward me. I never wanted the money. I just wanted to know where I stood. I wanted to know if I mattered to this family even half as much as Brittany does. I looked directly at my mother, and now I have my answer. I stood up, and Connor instantly stood up right beside me. I'll reach out when I'm ready, I said, keeping my voice calm. But it won't be today, it won't be tomorrow, and it won't be anytime soon. I turned and walked toward the front door. My mother's voice chased after me down the hallway. "Carolyn, you are blowing this completely out of proportion. It's a misunderstanding. Just let me explain." I stopped and turned around. "Mom, I don't need your money. I never did. But I needed to know that you cared. I needed to know that when you said you couldn't help, it was the truth." My voice was perfectly level, completely steady. It was the calmest I had ever felt in my entire life. "You had the means to help, but you simply chose not to. And then you had the nerve to stand up at my wedding and spin my struggle into a beautiful toast about how independent I am." I took a deep, clear breath. I am completely done fighting for things that should have been given to me unconditionally. I am done being the understanding daughter, and I am tired of having my needs ignored just because I learned how to ask for less. I am not the strong one anymore. Right now I am just a person who finally sees the truth. I pushed open the heavy front door and walked out. We left the house at exactly 8:47 p.m. The drive back to our apartment took 25 minutes. The entire way home, Connor just held my hand tight. Neither of us said a word. I didn't cry at all that night. I just lay in bed staring up at the dark ceiling, feeling an emotion I completely didn't expect. Pure relief. No more second guessing, no more hoping, no more pretending. I finally knew exactly where I stood. It's been 2 months since that night. My mother has not apologized. She sent 2 text messages. The first arrived 3 days after the meeting. It was an 8,400-character wall of text explaining her perspective, her reasons, and her right to financial independence. In all of those words, the phrase "I'm sorry" didn't appear a single time. The second text came on Christmas Day. "Merry Christmas, Carolyn. We miss you. The door is always open." I didn't reply to either of them. Brittany texted me once on January 10th. It was just 2 words, "I'm sorry." I wrote back, "For what?" She never answered. I don't think she even knows the answer herself. But my dad has changed. He called me a week after that evening. His voice sounded different, heavier, but somehow much clearer. "I opened my own checking account," he told me. "First time in 35 years. "How does it feel?" I asked. "Terrifying, but right. He hasn't left my mother, and to be honest, I don't think he ever will. 35 years is a long time, and at 63, starting over from scratch is incredibly daunting. But he's awake now. He sees the reality of his situation. He told me, "I am so incredibly sorry for not protecting you better. I'm sorry I didn't ask more questions. I'm sorry I let your mother convince me that you were doing fine and didn't need us." "I forgive you, Dad," I said. And I meant it. The moment he admitted he had no idea about the hidden money, I forgave him completely. Last week, Connor and I signed the lease on a new place. It's a 2-bedroom apartment just 12 minutes from the hospital at the Desert Ridge Complex in Tempe. It's $1,680 a month, and we move in on February 1st. We paid the $3,360 security deposit entirely on our own, without asking a soul for help. When I signed my name on that lease, my hand was perfectly steady. It didn't shake with desperation the way it did when I signed my 401k withdrawal form. This time I signed because I wanted to. Because it's something we built ourselves, and nobody can ever take it away from us. Tonight I'm sitting on our couch, the exact same couch where I sat at 2 a.m. typing out that wedding spreadsheet, looking out at the parking space where Connor's truck used to sit. We're going to buy a new truck next year, probably a pre-owned 2019 or 2020 model. Nothing flashy, but it will be ours. Every single thing we own will belong entirely to us. I used to think that being called the strong one was a badge of honor. I used to think that if I just worked hard enough, sacrificed enough, and demanded the absolute least, my family would eventually see me. I don't believe that anymore. Now I know that you shouldn't have to audition just to be noticed. Love shouldn't come with a list of conditions, and family shouldn't be a game you're set up to lose before you even start playing. My mother hid over $67,000. She had more than enough to divide equally between both of her daughters, but she chose to pour everything into one. It wasn't a question of their budget, it was a reflection of their values, and I can't change what someone values. What I can do is build something completely different, something real. A home where "I love you" simply means "I love you," not "I love you" only when you're convenient. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you for listening to my story. If you're that person in your own family, the one who always has to be understanding, the one who isn't allowed to have needs, the one told that independence is a gift when it actually feels like a penalty, I see you. You are not alone and you deserve so much better. If this story resonated with you, please leave a comment down below and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Let me know if you're going through something similar. I read every single comment. My name is Carolyn Stewart Gallagher. I'm 29 years old, and for the first time in my life, I am finally making my own choices. My name is Alicia Sanders. I'm 28 years old. On Thanksgiving Day in 2024, my parents stood firmly in the doorway of their home in Bellevue and told me I wasn't invited to the family dinner. Through the narrow gap between their shoulders, I could see everything inside. My older sister, Vanessa, was sitting at the head of the dining table, the exact spot that belonged to me, the seat I had occupied for 28 straight years. My uncle, Preston, was raising his glass for a toast, and my former best friend Claire was wearing my late grandmother's sapphire brooch pinned to her dress, a family heirloom my mother had promised to pass down to me since I was 16. Behind my parents, 23 people were laughing and clinking glasses. Not a single person looked toward the front door. Nobody had any idea I was standing outside in the freezing cold, arriving exactly 2 minutes early as always, holding a bottle of wine I would never get the chance to open. I didn't cry, and I didn't beg. I just nodded, turned around, and walked back to my car. 43 steps. I counted every single one. Then, I sat in the driver's seat for 4 minutes and made a call that changed absolutely everything. 20 minutes later, my phone was hit with 89 missed calls, and inside that house, the chaos completely boiled over. If you stick around until the end, you'll understand exactly why I don't regret what I did for a single second. Not even the part where my mother left a voicemail saying I was no longer her daughter. Let's rewind. Because to understand what happened on that Thanksgiving, you need to know exactly what I was doing during the 8 months leading up to it. I'm an investigative journalist for the Seattle Tribune. I specialize in corporate fraud and white-collar crime, the kind of offenses where people in expensive suits smile for the cameras while quietly pocketing millions of dollars. I've exposed embezzlement schemes, Ponzi operations, and contractor fraud. I'm highly trained at finding patterns in financial data, and even better at getting people to tell me the truth. But I never could have guessed that the biggest story of my career would unfold right inside my own family. Sanders Development Corporation, or SDC Realty, is our family business. My uncle Preston founded it 30 years ago, and my father serves as a silent partner. Together, they built an $850 million real estate empire across King County. Luxury condos, commercial developments, with at least 15 active projects running at any given time. 14 different buildings feature a bronze plaque near the entrance that reads, "The Sanders Legacy, Building Community. Enriching lives." I used to believe in that legacy completely. Every single Thanksgiving for 28 years was held at my parents' house overlooking Maidenbower Bay. Same house, same time, 6 p.m. sharp. The exact same routine. My mother's pumpkin pie, my father's prayer thanking God for family and the work of our hands, and Preston's annual toast to family and success. The order never varied. But the previous year, I noticed something unusual. The guest list included 3 people who typically wouldn't attend a private family holiday: Douglas Finch, Alan Reed, and City Council member Stephanie Lyle. All 3 were present. I didn't think much of it at the time, assuming it was just routine networking and standard business socializing. But 8 months ago, in April of 2024, my journalistic instincts kicked in. I was working on an unrelated piece about corrupt contractors when I stumbled across an invoice buried in a massive batch of public records I had requested for a completely different investigation. It was an invoice from SDC Realty made out to a company called Pacific Rim Consulting, LLC. The amount was $340,000 for strategic consulting services. I searched for Pacific Rim Consulting online. The company had been registered exactly 3 weeks before the payment was made and dissolved just 2 weeks after the funds cleared. That is the definition of a shell company, one of the oldest tricks in the financial fraud playbook. I checked the signature on the wire authorization, Preston Sanders, my uncle, and listed right on the carbon copy line was Vanessa Sanders, my older sister. I sat at my desk staring at that invoice for 20 minutes. My managing editor would absolutely kill for a lead like this, and my family would completely disown me if they found out I was tracking it. I had a choice to make. I could delete the file, pretend I never saw it, and go back to playing the role of the good daughter and supportive niece. Or I could do my job. I told myself that if I was wrong, I'd destroy the notes and never speak of it again. But if I was right, I would follow the evidence wherever it led. I began gathering data. The first step was accessing SDC's internal email server. I had completed a summer internship at the firm when I was 19, and they had assigned me login credentials to track project updates. That was 9 years ago. When I left for college and never returned to the business, they completely forgot to revoke my access. On May 3rd at 2:47 a.m., I logged into the network. My old username and password still worked perfectly. Over the next 4 hours, I downloaded 1,247 emails, purchase orders, wire confirmations, internal memos, city contracts, and direct correspondence with Douglas Finch's office regarding zoning changes. There were exchanges between Vanessa and Preston with subject lines like Rainier Valley eviction protocols and Finch requirements. One specific email exchange made my blood run cold. It was dated March 2024. Vanessa wrote to Preston, "The families in Rainier Valley are resisting the evictions. How aggressive should we get?" Preston's reply, "As aggressive as the law allows. We need that property cleared by April 15th. I cross-referenced the dates. April 15th was the exact day 6 families were evicted from a building SDC had acquired through eminent domain. In the Seattle housing market, a 30-day notice is practically nothing. I knew I needed to speak with those families directly. Over the next month, I tracked down and interviewed the people displaced by SDC's Rainier Valley project. The first person I met was a woman named Maria Gonzalez. She was 54, worked as a commercial cleaner, and was raising her daughter as a single mom. She had lived in that building for 12 years, and her daughter, Sophia, attended school just 3 blocks away. "They gave us exactly 30 days, Maria told me, sitting in her new apartment 40 minutes outside the city center. 30 days to find a place we could actually afford. You know what rents are like right now. I looked at 20 apartments and every single one was $800 or $900 more than what I was paying. For the first 2 months after we moved, my daughter cried every single night. New school, new neighborhood, and all her friends were gone. I asked her what SDC had offered as a relocation stipend. Maria gave a bitter laugh. $8,200. They bought out 12 years of my life and my daughter's entire childhood for $8,200. I took meticulous notes and recorded the entire conversation. Then I asked the question I knew I had to ask. Maria, if I write this story, if I investigate the people behind this, you need to know they are my family. My uncle runs the company and my sister works there. Does that change anything for you?" Maria looked at me for a long time. Then she asked, "Does it change your mind about writing it?" "No," I replied. "Then write it," she said. Over the next 3 weeks, I interviewed the other 5 families. All 6 accounts matched perfectly. Sudden eviction notices, minimal stipends, families ripped out of their communities, and children forced to change schools. And every single eviction notice bore my uncle's signature. But personal accounts weren't enough to build a solid case. I needed undeniable proof directly from their own mouths. So I started recording our family dinners. The first recording was made on April 15th, 2024. It was a Sunday. My parents hosted dinner every other week whenever Preston was in town. I arrived at 5:30 p.m. with a bottle of wine, my phone securely in my purse with the recording app running. I left my purse on the entryway table, close enough to capture the dining room audio but far enough to avoid any suspicion. Dinner started normally with casual small talk over my mother's pot roast. Vanessa complained about permit delays on a Bellevue project, and Preston discussed a meeting at the mayor's office. Then, at 6:45 p.m., while my dad was refilling the wine glasses, Preston spoke up. "Finch is getting nervous about the zoning adjustment." Vanessa replied, "He'll vote yes, he needs that campaign contribution." Preston asked, "How much?" Vanessa said, "50 through the usual channels." Right then, my mother asked me to pass the salt. I smiled, kept my hand perfectly steady and said, "Here you go, Mom." But my heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone at the table could hear it. A $50,000 campaign contribution through the usual channels was a clear bribe, a federal felony carrying up to 10 years in prison. Over the next 6 months, I recorded 3 more dinners, June 3rd, August 12th, and October 8th. Each tape revealed new details. They discussed how to manage city officials, joked about creative accounting, and Vanessa mentioned a non-profit organization they had set up as a tax shelter, a paper-only charity designed to funnel donations and lower taxable income. At the October 8th dinner, Preston shared a joke that had everyone laughing. He said, "The secret to success is keeping the city council happy. They're much cheaper than you'd think." Everyone laughed, and I forced myself to laugh along with them. Then I went home, threw up in the bathroom, and spent the night transcribing every single word. By mid-October, my investigation was complete. I had 4 audio recordings, 1,247 emails, and wire transfer logs showing $2.3 million moving through 5 shell companies into accounts tied to a city council member's family. I had statements from 6 displaced families. I had dates, amounts, and names. I had absolutely everything I needed except the green light to run it. Because publishing it meant destroying my family. On October 15th, I set up a meeting with James Callahan, a senior investigator with the FBI's Public Corruption Unit. I had worked with him 2 years earlier on a story about embezzled state funds. He was thoroughly honest and completely relentless. If anyone could handle this case properly, it was him. We met at 7:30 a.m. at a Starbucks on Broadway. I brought my laptop and a flash drive containing copies of all the evidence. After reviewing the files, James looked at me seriously. "This is federal corruption, right under the public integrity section. Bribery, wire fraud, and, if we dig deeper, potentially a RICO case." He focused on me closely. "But, Alicia, this is your family. Your uncle, your sister. Are you absolutely certain you want to move forward with this?" "I'm giving you everything I have," I told him. "Just promise me that when you make your move, you do it quickly. I don't want to give them time to shred documents or leave the country." James replied, "The day you give the word, we move. The agents will be ready, and the warrants will be signed. But once we execute this, there is no turning back. Do you understand?" "I understand," I said. "I'll tell you exactly when." For the next month, I waited. I attended family dinners, smiled, passed the side dishes, and took mental notes of every word, every look, and every lie they told themselves to maintain the illusion of being good people. Then November 20th arrived, and everything shifted completely. Every year, my mother sends a group text 2 weeks before Thanksgiving detailing the menu, the head count, and the arrival time. On November 15th at 3:42 p.m., that text went out. My name wasn't on the recipient list. I only found out because Vanessa posted an Instagram story later that afternoon showing a screenshot of the group text with the caption, "Can't wait for Thursday." I zoomed in on the recipient list. 9 names: my parents, Preston, Vanessa, my aunt and uncle, 2 cousins, and Claire. I wasn't there. I refreshed my messages, but there was nothing. I called my mother, and the call went straight to voicemail. 3 days later, on November 18th, Claire posted another story from the SDC corporate headquarters. It showed the conference room table covered in files captioned, "Thanksgiving prep with the fam #blessed." I zoomed in on the table and saw a printed seating chart. I counted 23 seats and scanned the visible names: Vanessa, Preston, Claire, Douglas Finch, and my parents. My name was nowhere to be found. I took a screenshot, not for evidence, but to look at whenever I needed to remind myself exactly why I was doing this. On November 20th, I texted my mother, "Hey Mom, just confirming Thursday at 6 p.m. Do you need me to bring anything? Love you." The message was marked as delivered and read at 2:47 p.m. No reply. I sent the same message to Vanessa. Read, no reply. I texted Claire. Read, complete silence. 2 days of absolute quiet followed. Then, on November 22nd at 4:47 p.m., just 2 days before Thanksgiving, my father finally called. "Sweetie," he said, his voice tense and clearly uncomfortable. "Hey Dad," I answered. "About Thursday I plan on heading over around 5:30 p.m. Does that work?" There was a long, heavy pause on the line. "Preston thinks it's best if you sit this year out, Alicia." I felt a cold weight drop in my chest. "What? Why?" Another long pause followed. "You've been asking a lot of questions about the business lately. It's making people uncomfortable." "People or Preston?" Silence. "Just listen to me on this one, Alicia, please." "Okay, Dad," I said quietly. He let out a visible sigh of relief. "Thank you, sweetie. We'll see you at Christmas." Before I could say another word, the line went dead. I sat on the couch holding my phone in silence. I didn't cry or scream. I just sat there as my world fell apart. They honestly thought I would just accept it. They thought I'd stay home quietly so they could enjoy a perfect Thanksgiving without the daughter who asked too many questions. They had absolutely no idea what okay really meant. On Thanksgiving Day, November 28, 2024, I spent the entire morning working. I finalized the copy for the investigation. 8,500 words, with every single detail documented, every source verified, and every allegation backed by solid proof. The headline read, Sanders Development Corporation, How a Bellevue Real Estate Empire Was Built on Corruption. The byline, Alicia Sanders, investigative journalist. At 2 p.m., I sent it to my managing editor, Rachel Mendoza, with a short note. Wait for my signal. The moment I say go, publish it immediately. Rachel called me right away. Alicia, are you completely sure about this? Once this hits the wire, you can't pull it back. Your name is on it. Everyone will know. That's exactly the point, I said. At 5:42 p.m., I got into my car and drove toward my parents' house. The drive took 16 minutes. The temperature outside was 38 degrees, and I kept the radio off, driving in absolute silence as the familiar streets of Bellevue passed by. These were the streets where I grew up, learned to ride a bike, and walked to school. The places where I once believed my family stood for something good. At 5:58 p.m., I parked across the street from the house, exactly 2 minutes early, as always. The circular driveway was filled with 6 cars, more than usual. I recognized Vanessa's Tesla, Preston's Mercedes, Claire's Audi, and 3 vehicles I didn't recognize, likely belonging to the council members. Through the windows, I could see the warm lights and the silhouettes of people gathered in the dining room under the chandelier, laughing and talking. I counted my steps from the car to the front door, 43 steps. My legs felt like lead, each step mechanical and deliberate. I wasn't nervous, I was completely numb. I reached up to knock, but before my knuckles could touch the wood, the door swung open. My mother stood on the left, and my father stood on the right, their bodies forming a solid barrier. Neither of them moved aside, and neither of them smiled. Alicia, my mother said, her voice entirely flat, we didn't expect you to come. Dad called, I replied, but I wanted to come anyway. I thought we could talk. My father spoke up. I know, but it's Thanksgiving. I thought maybe... My mother cut him off instantly. You aren't invited. 4 words, delivered like a routine weather forecast. Completely calm and final. The gap between them was barely 8 inches wide, just enough for me to see inside the house. Vanessa was sitting at the head of the table, occupying the exact chair I had used since I was 6 years old. She wore a cream-colored dress, holding a wine glass, caught mid-laugh at something someone had said. Preston stood right beside her, raising his glass for the annual tradition. To family, to success, and to the Sanders legacy. And Claire, who had been my best friend since sophomore year of high school, my former roommate, and the girl whose bridesmaid I was when she eloped and divorced all within 2 years. Claire sat just 3 seats away, and pinned to her black dress was my grandmother's sapphire brooch. That was the brooch my mother promised to pass down to me, the piece my grandmother wore for 50 years before she passed, the one family heirloom that was supposed to be mine. Claire caught me looking through the gap, our eyes locked. She smiled, raised her glass, and mouthed 3 words. I'm sorry. But she wasn't sorry at all. Behind my parents, the entire scene unfolded. 23 people were gathered around the extended dining table. The fine china, the crystal glasses, and our 3-generation silver turkey centerpiece gleamed under the chandelier. On the wall behind the table hung a banner. Welcome family and friends. I looked at my father. He couldn't bring himself to meet my eye. Preston stepped up right behind him, all 6'2" of him, wearing an expensive suit and sporting that signature smile he always wears right before closing a major deal. Alicia, he said, his voice easily carrying out to where I stood. This is a private family matter. You've already made it very clear where your loyalties lie. My loyalties? I countered. I'm your niece. You're a journalist who doesn't understand boundaries. What exactly are you afraid I'll write about, Uncle Preston? His smile didn't fade, but a flash of unease crossed his eyes. My mother's grip tightened on my father's arm. Preston said, You don't belong here anymore. Go home. I looked at my father one last time, waiting for him to say something. Nothing. Not a single word. He remained silent. I just nodded. All right. I turned around and walked back to my car. 43 steps. I counted every single one. Behind me, I heard the heavy front door shut, followed by the definitive click of the lock. Then, the sound of laughter drifted through the windows as they went right back to their dinner. I sat in my car from 5:58 p.m. to 6:02 p.m., 4 minutes. I stared at that house, watching the warm glow and looking at that perfect family enjoying their perfect Thanksgiving. Something settled deep inside me, cold but incredibly clear. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to James Callahan's contact, and hit dial. It rang once, then twice. Alicia, he answered. It's time, I said. Move in now. There was a brief pause on the other end line. Then James asked, Are you absolutely certain? Once we initiate this, there is no turning back. I am sitting right outside their house, I told him. They just told me I don't belong here, I'm certain. We have 8 agents ready to roll. The search warrants were signed 2 hours ago by Judge Murphy. How fast do we need to be there? How fast can you make it? 20 minutes. Actually, make it 18, James said. Alicia, you understand what this means, right? There's no going back. You're sure? I looked toward the house, staring at the windows. I saw Vanessa laughing. I saw Preston carving the turkey with the silver knife that had been in our family since 1952. There's nothing left to turn back to, I said. James replied, The team is moving out. Stay close by, but do not go inside. I'll be watching from out here, I said, and hung up. Then I called Rachel. She picked up on the very first ring. Are you okay? The story runs tomorrow morning at 6 a.m., I told her. Front page, both digital and print. I'm routing the final files to you right now. Alicia, are you really ready for this? 8,500 words, emails, audio files, financial records, and witness statements. It's all in there. Rachel's voice softened. This is Pulitzer-level reporting, but once it drops, everyone is going to know you were the source. Your family. That's exactly what I want them to know. A brief silence followed. Then Rachel said, All right, I'll have everything ready, 6 a.m. sharp. I hung up, opened my encrypted cloud drive, and selected every single file. 427 megabytes. Emails, audio recordings, financial logs, witness statements, and 28 years of family. I hit send, watching the upload progress bar move slowly across my screen. 427 megabytes. I drove 2 blocks east and parked where I had a clear line of sight to the front door in the driveway, but remained far enough away that they wouldn't notice me. It was 6:19 p.m. Through the windows, I saw the dining room lights dim slightly. Grace. My father always led the Thanksgiving prayer, and it always lasted exactly 3 minutes. The words were identical every single year. Bless this food, bless this family, and bless the labor of our hands. The labor of their hands was built entirely on a foundation of lies. At 6:21 p.m., the lights came back up, and Preston stood up. I couldn't hear him, but I knew exactly what he was saying. The annual toast, to family, to success, and to the Sanders legacy. 23 glasses were raised. 9 minutes left. At 6:25 p.m., my phone buzzed with an Instagram notification. Claire had posted a story. I opened it to find a photo of the dining table taken from her seat, the silver turkey, the laughing faces, everyone smiling. The caption read, Thankful and grateful. #family, first #Thanksgiving 2024. She had tagged 14 people. I scrolled through the tags. Every single name at that table was listed except mine. I took a screenshot and saved it, not as evidence, but as a reminder. At 6:29 p.m., Preston picked up the carving knife. It was a heavy silver piece with Sanders Family, 1952, engraved on the handle. 3 generations had used that knife to carve the Thanksgiving turkey. He had no clue he was carving the very last one. Through the window, I saw Vanessa throw her head back, laughing hysterically at something someone said. The sound didn't carry through the glass, but I could easily imagine it. That laugh, the one I had listened to my entire life. 3 minutes left. It was 6:31 p.m. 3 black Chevrolet Suburbans pulled onto the street. No sirens, no flashing lights. They moved like ghosts. I watched as 8 individuals stepped out of the vehicles. They wore tactical vests with large yellow letters printed across the back. FBI. Leading the team was James Callahan. He glanced toward my car, spotted me, gave a brief nod, and walked straight up to the front door. At 6:32 p.m., the doorbell rang. Through the windows, I saw everyone turn their heads, confusion rippling through the dining room. The doorbell? Everyone is already here. My father stood up and walked toward the door. 12 steps, I counted. He opened it, and James held up his badge along with a folded document. I watched my father's face turn completely pale. Then, even from 2 blocks away, the words drifted through the crisp November air. FBI, we have a warrant. What followed looked like a highly rehearsed operation. 8 agents filed through the front door, while 2 Seattle PD officers took up positions outside as backup. I could clearly hear James's voice. FBI, we have a federal search warrant for these premises, authorizing the seizure of all documents relating to Sanders Development Corporation. Everyone stay in your seats and do not move. Through the window, total chaos erupted inside. Vanessa screamed, "What on earth is going on?" Agent Ramirez, whose photo I had seen during my meetings with James, said firmly, "Ma'am, sit down right now." Preston stood up so quickly his chair flipped backward. "This is absurd! I'm calling my lawyer!" James stepped directly in front of him. "You can make that call from the field office, Mr. Sanders. You're under arrest." "Arrested for what? Federal corruption, bribery of public officials, and wire fraud? Shall I keep going?" Even from a distance, I saw Preston's face shift from bright red to stark white within seconds, matching the tablecloth. James pulled out a pair of handcuffs. "Preston Sanders, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Vanessa suddenly bolted toward the table, reaching for a laptop sitting on the sideboard. Agent Morrison, a massive man built like a football lineman, stepped directly into her path. "Ma'am, step back. That is my personal property. It's evidence now. Put your hands behind your back." Vanessa cried, screamed, and resisted, but Morrison efficiently secured the handcuffs. An evidence tag labeled number 347 was slapped onto her laptop. The guests sat completely frozen, forks suspended mid-air and wine glasses hovering. A portrait of pure shock. City Councilman Douglas Finch slowly rose from his seat, attempting to slip toward the back door. Agent Chen, stationed near the kitchen, cut him off. "Councilman Finch, we have a few questions for you as well. Take a seat." Finch sat back down. My mother was sobbing. Dad stood right beside her, a hand on her shoulder, saying nothing and doing nothing. His face looked 10 years older in a matter of 10 seconds. The agents moved through the house like a well-oiled machine. 3 went upstairs to Preston's home office. 2 began photographing the dining room exactly as it was. Another began collecting everyone's cell phones for forensic review. The evidence boxes started coming out. Laptops, external hard drives, files from Preston's office, 17 cell phones, and crate after crate of contracts and financial documents. Agent Ramirez walked past the dining table. She paused, looking at the silver turkey centerpiece, the banner on the wall, and the 23 neatly arranged place settings where the food was rapidly growing cold. She spoke into her radio. "Secure all digital assets and document the scene exactly as it stands." She glanced up at the doorbell camera mounted above the entryway, looking straight into the lens, straight at me as I watched the live feed via my phone app. She gave a very slight nod. My mother turned to my father. "How could this happen?" My father didn't say a word. "Say something, do something." "There's nothing left to say," he replied quietly. His gaze drifted out the window, scanning the street, landing right on the spot where I was parked 2 blocks away. I don't think he could actually see me in the dark, but I think he knew exactly where I was. At 6:54 p.m., Preston and Vanessa were led out of the house in handcuffs. 2 news vans had already arrived, Channel 5 and Channel 7, their cameras rolling. Preston walked past his own mailbox with his hands secured behind his back, passing the brass nameplate that read, "The Sanders Family," and stepping across the manicured lawn he paid $200 a week to maintain. Vanessa was weeping, mascara running down her cheeks, stumbling slightly in her high heels. They were placed into 2 separate SUVs. 8 neighbors stood on their lawns watching the scene unfold, recording everything on their phones. The moment Preston's SUV pulled away, my phone started vibrating continuously. 47 missed calls in 6 minutes. I didn't answer a single one. I sat in my car watching the screen light up over and over again. Vanessa, Vanessa, Dad, Vanessa, unknown number, Claire, Claire, Vanessa, Mom. The names just kept scrolling. I just watched. From 6:38 p.m. to 7:15 p.m., a span of 37 minutes, I received a total of 89 calls and 156 text messages. My phone battery dropped from 73% down to 31. Then the voicemails started rolling in. Vanessa left 12 all by herself. When I finally got back to my apartment that night, I poured myself a glass of wine, sat on the floor with my back against the wall, and listened to them. Voicemail 1, received at 6:41 p.m. "You absolute piece of garbage! You did this! You ruined us! You—" The line cut off. She was screaming so hard the audio completely distorted. Voicemail 4, received at 6:58 p.m. Alicia, please pick up. Please, we can fix this. You just need to tell them you made a mistake. Just tell them that. Voicemail 9, received at 7:22 p.m. You destroyed us. You destroyed your own family. I hope you can live with yourself for the rest of your life. Voicemail 12, received at 7:48 p.m. Just crying. No words, just 90 seconds of her sobbing into the receiver before hanging up. I saved every single one of them, not as evidence, but as a reminder. At 7:03 p.m., my father sent a text message containing just a few words. How could you do this to us? I read it 4 times. I started typing a reply. You brought this on yourselves. I deleted it. I typed, I'm sorry. I deleted that too. Ultimately, I sent nothing. Claire sent 18 texts between 6:44 p.m. and 7:38 p.m. I can't believe you did this. I thought we were friends. You know I had nothing to do with their business dealings, right? Alicia, answer me. You're going to regret this. Everyone will know what you did. You're dead to me. The final one came at 7:41 p.m. You will never have a friend in this city again. I blocked her number. 3 separate reporters called. They were competitors. Word travels fast in the Seattle media scene. Trevor Chen from King Channel left a voicemail. Alicia, we're hearing reports that the FBI raided SDC Realty tonight at your parents' house. Can you offer any comment? Call me back as soon as possible. I didn't call him back. In 11 hours, my reporting would speak for itself. At 7:52 p.m., Rachel called. I'm watching the news coverage right now, she said. The FBI is still at your parents' house and 3 people are currently in custody. Are you okay? I'm fine. Alicia. I'm fine. Is the story ready to go? It drops at 6 a.m. sharp. Front page, digital and print. But listen, once this goes live, your name is going to be everywhere. No anonymity, no protection. Everyone will know you were the source. Good, I said. That's exactly what I want. Rachel was quiet for a second. Then you're either incredibly brave or completely out of your mind. Maybe a bit of both. See you tomorrow morning. I hung up. At 8:15 p.m., I went through my phone contacts systematically, one by one. Block, block, block. 23 numbers in total. Every single person who sat at that Thanksgiving dinner, laughing and eating while I stood out in the cold. I left only one number unblocked, my mother's. Just in case she wanted to say the one thing that actually mattered, the one thing that could change everything. She never called, but someone else did. At 11:34 p.m., an unknown number with a 425 area code popped up. I almost didn't answer. I was exhausted, having been awake for 19 hours straight. My apartment was pitch black, lit only by the glow of my laptop screen as I reviewed Rachel's final edits on the piece. But a journalist always answers the phone. Hello? A woman's voice answered, trembling slightly. Is this Alicia Sanders? Yes, it is. Who is this? Maria Gonzalez. I don't know if you remember me. Maria, my voice caught slightly. Of course I remember you. I saw the news reports. Sanders Development, the FBI. That was the company that took our home away. I know, Maria. I remember. I interviewed you back in June. You spent 3 hours with me, Maria said, her voice cracking. You listened to my whole story. You cried right along with me. My daughter Sophia, she saw your name on the news crawl on TV. She said, Mom, that's the kind lady, the reporter who actually listened to us. I closed my eyes. How is Sophia doing? She's good. She's doing great. We found a new apartment closer to my work. She paused. Alicia, were they your family, the people who were arrested? Yes, they were. I am so sorry. Don't be sorry, Maria. But they're your family. This must hurt terribly. I didn't know what to say to that. Maria continued, I know it must be painful. I know it is. But Alicia, you gave me my voice back. You gave Sophia hope. She actually believes in justice now because of you. Because you listened. Because you wrote our story down. And because you chose... Her voice broke completely. You chose us. I didn't choose between you and them, I said quietly. I chose the truth. Maria went quiet. We spoke for another 8 minutes about Sophia's new school, the settlement they hoped to receive, and how she told her daughter, sometimes people do the right thing, no matter what it costs them. Thank you, Maria said before hanging up. Thank you for choosing the truth. After she hung up, I sat on the floor of my apartment and cried. It was the very first time I had shed a tear all day. I wasn't crying for what I had lost. I was crying for what I had finally found. I found my purpose. I didn't sleep at all that night. At 5:55 a.m., my story went live on the network. At exactly 5:55 and 1 second, I refreshed the Seattle Tribune homepage. There it was, right at the top of the front page, digital edition. The bold headline read, "Sanders Development Corporation: How a Bellevue Real Estate Empire Was Built on Corruption." The subhead, an investigative reporter turns the lens on her own family, uncovering a web of bribery, fraud, and forced evictions. The byline, Alicia Sanders, investigative journalist, 8,500 words, every single email, recording, wire transfer, displaced family, and lie, all of it laid bare. I brewed a pot of coffee and watched the view counter climb. By 6:15 a.m., it had 18,000 views. By 7:02 a.m., 94,000. By 9:11 a.m., 340,000 views. It was the number 2 trending topic nationwide on Twitter. My phone started ringing off the hook again, but this time it wasn't my family, it was the media. The New York Times wanted an interview. The Washington Post wanted to buy syndication rights. CNN wanted me on the air. I said yes to every single request. At 2 p.m., the FBI held a live press conference, and I watched it from my laptop. James Callahan stood at the podium, looking serious and professional. Today, federal agents arrested Preston Sanders, CEO of Sanders Development Corporation, and Vanessa Sanders, VP of Development, on federal corruption charges including bribery of public officials, wire fraud, and conspiracy. We anticipate additional arrests in the coming days. This investigation has been active for 9 months, made possible by the incredible courage of an inside source who stepped forward with critical evidence. He didn't state my name, but every reporter in that room already knew it. My byline was currently flashing across every screen in the country. The dominoes fell rapidly after that. On November 28th at 5 p.m., Preston Sanders had his bail set at $5 million, which was denied. At 5:15 p.m., Vanessa Sanders was granted a $3 million bail, requiring an electronic ankle monitor. On November 29th at 9:30 a.m., Councilman Douglas Finch had bail set at $2 million. At 1:45 p.m., Councilman Alan Reed's bail was set at $1.5 million. At 4:20 p.m., Councilwoman Stephanie Lyle resigned her position immediately, pending her formal bail hearing. By the end of the weekend, 9 people were behind bars. Rachel called me on the night of the 29th at 7:14 p.m. "Alicia, this is a Pulitzer Prize winning piece. I mean it sincerely." "It cost me absolutely everything," I told her. "No, it cost them everything," she corrected. "You chose the truth, and that's exactly what this job requires." I fell silent. "Alicia, was it worth it?" Rachel paused. "Go ask Maria Gonzalez." I hung up and stared down at my phone. There was a new voicemail from my mother received at 9:42 p.m. I pressed play. Pure silence filled the line at first. Just the sound of breathing for 8 full seconds. Then, "Alicia." Her voice was trembling, very soft. "You destroyed this family. Your father won't even look at me. Vanessa's kids are only 7 and 9, and they're asking why Aunt Alicia sent their mommy to jail. What am I supposed to tell them? How do I explain that their aunt—" She broke down sobbing. "You're my daughter, but I don't even know who you are anymore. Preston is facing 15 years. They put an ankle monitor on Vanessa like she's a common criminal. Our family name is completely ruined, and for what? A story? Your career?" She paused, followed by another 8 seconds of heavy breathing. "Don't call us. Don't come home. Don't send a card for Christmas. You are not welcome here. Not ever." Silence. "You are no longer my daughter." The message cut off at 47 seconds. I played it 6 times, memorizing every single word, every breath, and every pause where she almost said something else but held it back. Then, I saved it into a folder labeled Crucial. Not to use as a weapon, but as a reminder. The price of doing the right thing isn't always paid by the person who committed the crime. Then I turned my attention to writing the follow-up piece, because 3 more city officials were about to go down. The weeks that followed blurred together into a strange dream. By the 2nd week, Preston accepted a plea deal, 8 years in federal prison, $12 million in asset forfeitures, and full cooperation with the ongoing investigation. His attorney released a brief statement. "Mr. Sanders deeply regrets his actions and wishes to make amends." Regret, not an apology. By the third week, Vanessa rejected her plea deal, and her trial was set for March 17, 2025. She faced 14 federal counts, looking at 12 to 15 years if convicted. According to the court filings, her defense strategy was to shift the blame onto Preston, claiming she was manipulated and was just following orders. But that defense won't hold up. I have the emails she wrote in her own words, documenting her own decisions. By week 4, Sanders Development Corporation officially filed for bankruptcy protection. Their assets sat at $420 million, with liabilities mounting to $680 million, leaving them at a negative net worth of $260 million. 340 employees were laid off the day before Christmas. 14 buildings faced foreclosure. Those bronze plaques began coming down one by one. The Sanders legacy: building community, enriching lives. Someone spray-painted over one of the empty spaces, built on a foundation of lies. By the 5th week, the court ordered restitution payments to be distributed to the displaced families. Maria Gonzalez received $142,000. The other 5 families received amounts ranging from $109,000 to $135,000. A combined total of $762,000. Maria sent me a photo of Sophia holding the check, tears running down her face as she smiled, captioned, "Justice." By the 6th week, Claire Donovan resigned her position at SDC and relocated to Phoenix. She sent me an email with the subject line, "I'm sorry." The message read, "Alicia, I'm moving to Phoenix to start over. I should have been as brave as you were. I should have spoken up. I chose comfort instead, and I chose wrong. I am so sorry I wasn't the friend you deserved. Claire." I didn't reply. Some friendships simply can't be saved, and some shouldn't be. By week 8, I won the Pacific Northwest Journalism Award for Excellence in Investigative Reporting. The ceremony took place on January 29th at a hotel in downtown Seattle, with 200 people in attendance. Rachel presented me with the award. In my acceptance speech, I thanked Maria and the other 5 families. I thanked James Callahan and the FBI. I thanked my managing editor. I didn't mention my family at all, and everyone in the room understood exactly why. I started therapy twice a week on January 5th with Dr. Sarah Patel, a trauma specialist who works extensively with whistleblowers and victims of domestic disruption. "You did the right thing," Dr. Patel told me during our 3rd session. "But that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt." "When does it stop hurting?" I asked. "Maybe never, but the pain changes form." She looked at me closely. "Do you regret it?" I answered honestly, "No, but I am deeply sad." On February 3rd, I ran into my father at the grocery store, the Safeway on 148th Avenue, in aisle 7 near the cereal. I spotted him first. He looked so much older and somehow smaller, as if he had lost weight he couldn't afford to drop. Our eyes locked for 3 seconds. He turned his shopping cart around and walked in the opposite direction without looking back. I finished my shopping, paid for the cereal, went home, and cried for an hour. Now it's November 28, 2025, a full year later. I woke up in my studio apartment on Capitol Hill, 450 square feet, $1,650 a month. A second-hand couch from Craigslist, an IKEA bookshelf, and a cracked bathroom tile in the corner. But it is my home. It's built on a foundation of truth, not corruption, family money, or lies. Just the truth. Rachel invited me to her house for Thanksgiving dinner, and James did too. Even Maria invited me to join her family meal. I turned them all down, not because I'm lonely, but because I needed to prove to myself that I could be perfectly fine entirely on my own. I bought my dinner at the QFC on Broadway, a rotisserie chicken for $8.99, a box of stovetop stuffing for $2.49, a can of Ocean Spray cranberry sauce for $1.99, instant mashed potatoes for $3.29, and a store-brand sparkling apple cider for $1.74. A grand total of $18.50. The previous year's Thanksgiving at my parents' house probably cost $1,200 just for the catering. I set out a single plate, 1 fork, 1 knife, and a paper napkin. No fine linen here, no silver turkey, no 3-generation heirlooms, no family legacy, just me. My laptop sat open on the coffee table. I'm currently deep into a new investigation involving a tech startup called TechRise Analytics. They raised $47 million from investors using completely fabricated user data, while forcing employees to work 100 hours a week on equity promises that will never vest. Same pattern, different industry. The work never stops. As I was sorting through my emails, a notification popped up at 3:47 p.m. with the subject line, Pulitzer Prize finalist notification. I stared at it for 10 seconds before clicking it open. Dear Ms. Sanders, on behalf of the Pulitzer Prize Board, we are pleased to inform you that your work, Sanders Development Corp., How a Bellevue Real Estate Empire Was Built on Corruption, has been selected as a finalist for the 2025 Pulitzer Prize in Investigative Reporting. The finalist list will be publicly announced on March 1st, and the winners will be revealed on April 14, 2025. I read it 4 times, and then the tears came. Not tears of sadness and not tears of joy, but tears of pure validation and relief. I looked around my tiny apartment, taking in my second-hand furniture, my cracked tile, and my IKEA bookshelf packed way past its weight capacity. And I just smiled. Then my phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. I opened it. Ms. Sanders, my name is Mike Torres, the site foreman at the Rainier Valley Demolition Project. We uncovered something today while clearing out the old structure. I thought you might want it. An image loaded on the screen showing a heavy bronze plaque, 24 by 18 inches, bearing the inscription, The Sanders Legacy, Building Community, Enriching Lives, dedicated 2019 by Sanders Development Corporation. The building it came from was 4400 South Rainier Avenue, the exact property where Maria Gonzalez lost her home. I texted back, what are they building on that lot now? Mike replied, affordable housing, 120 rent-controlled units opening in the spring of 2026. Now that's a real legacy, isn't it? I met Mike the following day, and he handed over the bronze plaque. It weighed 18 pounds. I asked him what he thought I should do with it, and he just shrugged. You're the one who brought them down. Feels like it belongs to you. I brought it home, but I didn't hang it on the wall. I placed it face down in the corner by the front door to use as a door slatch. I walk past it every single day, and every day it serves as a powerful reminder. A legacy isn't something you brag about. It's what you actually leave behind. But Thanksgiving of 2025 had one more surprise in store. At 7:23 p.m., my phone buzzed with an email notification from Vanessa. I almost deleted it without reading, but curiosity got the better of me. The message had been routed through the prison email network via an outside friend's account. Alicia, I've had 8 months to do nothing but think. You get a lot of time to sort through things in here. No distractions, no excuses, just 4 walls and the reality of what happened. You were right about absolutely everything. Preston manipulated me, yes, but I allowed it to happen. I knew what we were doing was wrong. I chose profits over people and comfort over courage. My kids ask about you constantly. Where did Aunt Alicia go? I don't know what to tell them. Do I tell them their aunt was braver than their mother? Do I tell them I chose a lie while she chose the truth? I am so sorry. I know it doesn't change anything, and I know you probably won't forgive me, but I had to say it. I was wrong. You were right. I am so sorry I wasn't as strong as you. Maybe someday. Not today, but maybe someday. Vanessa. I read it 4 times. At first I felt absolutely nothing, then a tiny spark of emotion, and then nothing again. I sat there staring at the screen for 23 minutes, drafting 4 different responses. Thank you. I forgive you. Deleted. Too little, too late. Deleted. I hope you find peace. Deleted. At 7:46 p.m., I sent a single sentence. I forgive you, but I don't trust you. Maybe someday, but not today. A read receipt popped up at 7:48 p.m., and then I blocked the number. Because forgiveness doesn't mean automatic reconciliation. Forgiveness means letting go of the anger. It doesn't mean opening the door back up. At least, not right now. Maybe never. I went to bed that night, and, for the first time in a year, slept for 8 uninterrupted hours. On April 14, 2026, the day of the Pulitzer announcement, I was in the Tribune newsroom with Rachel and 5 other colleagues. Starting at 11 in the morning, we refreshed the Pulitzer website every 30 seconds. At 1:07 p.m. Pacific Time, the results updated, and Rachel let out a loud scream. I just stared intently at the screen. Investigative reporting. Alicia Sanders, The Seattle Tribune. for exposing systemic corruption within a family real estate empire, holding powerful institutions accountable with extraordinary courage at great personal cost. Rachel broke down crying. I didn't. I had already done enough crying to last a lifetime. The award ceremony took place on May 2nd in New York. I wore a dress I bought for $200 at Nordstrom Rack and accepted the award on stage in front of 300 people. The prize included a $15,000 check, which I donated entirely to the Rainier Valley Tenants Union. Now it's November 24th, 2026, exactly 2 years after the Thanksgiving that changed everything. This time, I'm not spending the holiday alone in my apartment. I am at the Rainier Valley Community Center. It's 6 p.m., and the event is called the Displaced Families Reunion Dinner. It was organized by the Tenants Union and funded by the restitution money the families received, reinvested back into community support. 38 people are here. The 6 families I interviewed, housing advocates, supporters, and the friends they've made over the past 2 years of rebuilding their lives from scratch. I am the guest of honor. The tables are mismatched, the chairs are folding ones, and the meal is a true potluck. Everyone brought something representing their culture: Filipino lumpia, Mexican tamales, Vietnamese spring rolls, and classic soul food mac and cheese. In the center of each table, instead of an heirloom silver turkey, sits a paper turkey handmade by Sofia Gonzalez's 3rd grade class. Maria spotted me walking through the door and threw her arms around me, holding on tight for 20 full seconds. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for giving us our voices back." Sophia is 13 now, noticeably taller and far more confident. She's wearing a t-shirt that reads, "Future Journalist." She grins widely at me. "Ms. Sanders, do you remember me?" "Of course I remember you, Sophia. I made the honor roll this year, and I joined the school newspaper club because of you." I smiled warmly. "That's amazing, Sophia. Did you win that big prize, the Pulitzer?" "Yes, I did," I replied. She nodded seriously. "Good, you completely deserved it." James Callahan was there, too. He was off the clock, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of his usual suit. At 7:15 p.m., he stood up and raised a plastic cup filled with apple cider. "I've spent 23 years in law enforcement," he said. "I've seen brave people do incredible things, but Alicia Sanders..." He looked right at me. She didn't just expose a crime. She sacrificed her family, her comfort, and her safety for total strangers, for the truth, and for what was right. So I'd like to propose a toast to the people who choose truth over comfort, to the family we choose for ourselves, to Alicia. 38 people raised their mismatched cups, paper cups, plastic cups, and a few coffee mugs. It was absolutely perfect. At the far end of the table, someone, I couldn't quite see who, asked the one question I had been waiting 2 years for someone to ask. "If you don't mind me asking, do you ever miss your family, your real family?" The room went completely quiet. I looked around at the 38 faces surrounding the table. I looked at Maria and Sophia, at James, at the advocates and organizers who had spent 2 years helping displaced families rebuild, and at the paper turkeys, the potluck dishes, and the folding chairs. "I'm sitting right here with my family," I said. Maria squeezed my hand under the table. Sophia beamed, and James just nodded. This was family. Before I left, I took a quick photo on my phone. 38 people gathered around mismatched tables, paper turkeys, and smiling faces. I didn't upload it anywhere or share it online. I just saved it to my camera roll with a short caption. Thanksgiving 2026. Real. Walking back into my apartment that night, I passed the bronze plaque. It was still there, face down, serving as my doorstop. I paused, looked down at it, and smiled because I finally understood. A legacy isn't something you inherit. It's something you earn. It's not your name etched onto the side of a building. It's your name etched into the hearts of the people you helped. That is a real legacy. That is a real family. That is home. I walked past the plaque, stepped into my apartment, and closed the door.